Hi, I'm Edgar.
And I'm Paul.
And welcome back to The Brush, model making and mini painting podcast where we talk about all of the cool stuff that we get up to.
Very special episode as we've reached double digits.
Yes, this is episode 10.
So today we're going to be discussing painting larger scale miniatures than what we're used to. A little bit of sculpting. We're going to talk about sub-assembly, which is quite interesting. I mean,
painting in little bits.
Yeah. As part of the 10th episode special, we have an interview today with Miss Minilife and discussing how she got started and back to the brush.
A really cool little special thing for us today that we have to show for you. But before we do any of the cool stuff, let's mention that we have an Instagram page. So any of the stuff that we'll be talking about in the episode today, we'll pick the 10 most relevant or kind of best fitting pictures and throw them up on the Instagram for you to have a better look if you want to just listen kind of audio only. And let's talk about some of the models that we've made this month. As anyone who's been following my channel knows, I've been making an awful lot of Gaunt's Ghosts.
How many of them would you say you have now,
Ed? This month or in total?
In total.
In total, I think I've got about 40. So,
soon.
Painted and ready to go, I've got about 40.
500-point game.
Not a full army, but it's certainly enough for a 500-point game, yeah. But these are the ones I painted this month. I've got a heavy weapons team on another one of the large bases.
They're cool.
I've got some of the command squad, the Cadian command squad that I've shown off. That would have been last week's video.
The unboxing.
As of the recording of the podcast, I've done an unboxing of the Cadian command squad, and I've done an unboxing of the Gaunt's Ghosts command squad. As far as you watching, if you're watching the podcast on the day it goes up, the Cadian command squad was last week, and then the Gaunt's Ghost command squad will be tomorrow, I think. Depends on when the podcasts go up. But I haven't actually started painting those. I've just put them together. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of Tanith. Is it 12? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It's 12 of them in total.
I must admit, watching back these videos you've been doing with your Gaunt's Ghosts, the green stuff capes are getting a lot better in a very short period of time.
Yeah. In over the span of about 5 cloaks, I went and watched a lot of videos and kind of got some ideas from other people as well. But I got to the point where I thought I was able to teach the basics, the very first steps. So if someone watches the video on this, which is titled like tutorial on how to do a milliput cloak or something like that, this is my 5th or 6th cloak, but the technique works well enough that if someone follows that and does 3 or 4 of them, they'll get to at least as good as me, if not better.
Yeah, so I was just saying it's quite interesting seeing the cape sort of evolving. Green stuff, well, it's not free, but it's considerably more cost effective than the alternatives. So,
what's the model that you've been having fun with?
Those of you that play 40k will probably know that the Sisters of Battle have just had a new codex and new releases. So this month I've stepped away from the Fallout and gone back to 40k. So
back to the 40k.
Back to 40k with my brush. Yay. I returned to the last model that I built for Sisters of Battle that I didn't actually paint. So she's here.
That's the one with a fancy name, isn't it? Not the Diagonal.
No,
the other one.
It's Saint. I can't remember her name.
Saint something.
Saint something.
Should we do one of those audio fill-ins where you kind of just move your mouth and then tomorrow you send me an audio clip of you saying the name?
There it is. It's Judith.
Oh, we've actually got the box. That's a far more sensible idea.
Let me put that back in the bin. So I was sort of experimenting by doing like a marble effect on the steps, which is quite cool. Yeah, I enjoyed that. And I did some little cactuses on the base. I did a just deserty.
Good old cacti. I don't think I've ever done a proper desert base with cacti. I should probably do that at some point.
Then I started on... How did we say his name? It's Talicus?
It's whichever one that I want to say, it's not. It's the other way. It's either Thaddeus or Thaddeus. So I think it's Thaddeus.
So
because there's no H. Or is there?
No, there's not a H. I don't think there is.
So it's Thaddeus.
Yeah. So this character and this character are now... Their loadouts are now part of the rules for Sisters of Battle. Oh, if anyone doesn't know, these two come from the Blackstone Fortress board game. So they're exclusive to that. But the Sisters of Battle army, you can have a missionary and a priest. And previously they had set weapon loadouts that didn't match these, but now they do as options. So you can run these in your Sisters of Battle army. The only other thing I've started painting, but rapidly ran out of paint, is this guy, which I did with heavily watered down purple paint, which doesn't look too bad on the camera, but in real life it's proper washed out.
Is it just really thin and...
Yeah, it's only one coat as well, so...
And splotchy. Yeah. So you're going to get some more purple?
I've got some already, yeah.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah, I've got some already.
Was there another paint that you were having trouble with?
The
white on Thaddeus.
Oh, of course, yeah. When I primed this, when I bought it probably over a year ago, I primed it in black. And then...
Painting a white model, prime it black. This makes perfect sense.
So, painting the white has been an absolute nightmare. Won't do that again.
I found an interesting technique just accidentally, because when I painted the Volpone and the Volponi, I painted the eye, it was a white eye on top of a dark purple, but I painted it grey, so I painted one layer of grey, and then I painted one layer of white, and it came out really, really bright white.
Cool.
So maybe that's a technique that you at home can use when you want to paint white over a dark background. One layer of grey and then one layer of white, or at least try it just to see if that has any effect, because it worked for that model. Thing is, I wasn't trying to go for that. I wanted it grey, and then I was like, no, I want it white, so I changed it.
Yeah. And
it just came out brilliant white.
And related, I managed to score some glaze. My local model shop had like 8 pots of this still at the original retail price. So I got myself one and Ed one just so we can have a play.
Have they gone up in price?
They don't sell them anymore. They discontinued them.
Oh, really?
So on eBay, if you want one of these unopened, you're looking at 30 quid.
Given that a glaze is just a watered down paint, I'll teach you how to glaze when you come down next.
I quite enjoyed watching Dana Howe. I always mention her. I sound like I'm obsessed with her. Dana Howe's video.
Dana Howe is an excellent
teacher
resource for the community. Her videos are an excellent resource for the community.
So she was talking about making glaze with obviously the Vallejo medium, which is my plan moving forwards. But I thought, well, I'd have a play with that. So I thought I'd pick 2 up. That's one each.
You can glaze just off of your wet palette with water. It can be done, and it requires more finesse than if you have a proper glaze medium, but it can be done. Using the right type of glaze, like a thinning medium or even a specific glaze medium, does make it easier. Buying 6 or 7 or 10 or 50 different glazes in different colours, I think, is kind of unnecessary.
Oh, definitely not. I must admit, what I wanted to test it for, hang on one sec. What I wanted to do the glazing for was these, the Sacrosants. So their shields are like a...
they're the ones with the fancy shields.
It's like a copper... It might be easy to see on the back. It's like a coppery gold colour with like a red tinge. So I was thinking of going for the Balthasar gold, because I love that colour. I love that colour. That's like a coppery sort of gold colour. And then doing a red glaze over the top, which is my thought process for that particular model.
Interestingly,
back in the box, and shame you.
And I think this is something you said you wanted to look at the last podcast, because I painted some orc an Orc bike and then an Orc Deathcopter by painting it a metallic and then glazing red over the top.
Yeah, it was really nice.
And that's a very similar, and that was just with a an artist's matte medium. So not just water, but not a specific glaze medium. Glazing over metal, I think, is a technique that I really want to look at more when I have models. Kind of, I'm stuck in doing a lot of the Tanith at the moment, and it doesn't really apply. But I will at some point get out of that and do other things. And glazing over a metallic.
Just refer back to last month when I was talking about doing the mirrors. And I was talking about the mirror paint that I'd seen videos online. So I'm not going to be doing that anymore because it's £30 a pop.
Ah, right. So the same price as the glaze.
So midwinter, purchased. There was 2 or 3 that were saying it's mirror-like, and then they also got the Vallejo and the Citadel and all that.
There's been a few videos recently of comparing metallics,
and
they were all kind of
while it looked good, he did a comparison. He did a blind test, painted a model and a piece of cardboard, and then decided which one looked best, and the Citadel one came out third. So if I can get this roughly the same effect as using lead belcher, what's the point? I ain't paying 30 quid for a tub of paint.
Well, the last mini that I have to show off, because I painted 13 this month, 12 of them are the ghosts that I've already shown, and just one remaining is one of the Zona Secrets of Chernobyl board game that I've been playing and also kind of painting the models of. And this is the 4th of the 10. There's 10 in the box. And this is the scientist. And we had... I essentially wrote a whole story based on what happened in the game. Because the cards themselves, as you're playing the game, you get event cards, you get various different like rumor cards and things that just have a short bit of flavor text about what's going on. And I kind of tied a few of them together. Like once I'd finished, I tied a few of them together and just wrote a story about my journey. And it was kind of fun to do it. That I think I'm gonna carry on with that technique. Certainly I need to get back to doing the Zona ones, because I said last month that I was doing 2 a month and I only painted 1. This month I've also only painted 1, so I'm kind of falling behind. I need to get onto that. So was there another model from you, or is that all?
That's all I have painted this month, yeah.
And so we have our interview that we mentioned earlier. We have an interview with Miss Minilife, who I spoke to a few days ago. Miss Minilife is a fairly new YouTuber. I say that, she's been going for about a year, so not that new. And she has a wonderful style. She does diorama builds, like little buildings, little houses. Occasionally she does characters, but usually it's just the room, foliage and details and greebles. She's really good at adding in all sorts of details in it. So I spoke to her and we asked her what it was like to get back to the brush. And so over to me for that interview. Thank you very much, me, and welcome back to the brush to Miss Minilife.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Lovely.
Thanks for asking.
So let's go straight into some questions. And the big question for Back to the Brush, given that that is the name of our podcast, is of course, how did you get back to the brush? Or how did you get into the diorama building that you've been doing?
I slid into diorama building thanks to YouTube and the trend of people cooking tiny things in little kitchens. And I saw a kitchen and thought, you know what, that would be cute to make, and I could probably make that, since I've been doing like art things my whole life, but never really miniatures. And then I attempted to build a tiny house, and then I just kept making more and more little stuff, and yeah, here I am, I guess.
That actually answers one of the other questions I had, which is, are there any creators that have inspired you? But could you maybe suggest some other creators more recently who have inspired you to do certain things, certain techniques, or certain builds?
I've liked all of the videos I've seen by someone I'm in like 50 different communities because I just like miniatures, period. So I was on Midwinter Minis channel, and I like his community is like wargaming and like painting minis and building miniature terrain. And then I also like Bentley House Minis on YouTube, who makes like she does like kind of everything, but she makes a lot of dollhouse miniature stuff and like miniature rooms and miniature ship cabins and stuff like that. But I've been watching people make miniature food out of polymer clay, so I don't know, just all over the place.
Yeah, some cool stuff, and something for me to look up as well, some new names there. So during your videos, particularly the way that you kind of frame your videos, music seems to be a very important part of that. At what point do you kind of pick out what tracks that you're going to play? Is that like the first thing and then you fit the video to that, or the other way around?
It's usually the other way around. But I'll try different music. I got a subscription to Epidemic Sound recently, like a couple of videos ago, and that's when it started being care more about the music. Because in the beginning I was just finding anything free, and if I kind of liked it, I just put it in there because I had no money. Because it took more time to find music than to like make whatever I was making. But now that I have that subscription, I'll just like listen to a bunch of things and be like, oh, I think this feels like the vibe I'm going for.
Yeah, it feels right. It fits. That's good.
Yeah.
And kind of following on from that with the process, as it were, of your creations, what's your advice to people at home about how, once they've got started on a project, how do they then finish the project? Because there's many different ways that people can get sidetracked or lose interest with the project. What would you suggest for finishing things off?
There's like kind of two issues I've run into. One is that I get bored in the middle of a project and don't want to finish it just because I'm bored, which the solution, yeah, the solution for me has been I have to work on like several things at once. So if I'm working on more than one project, whatever one seems more interesting at the time, I'll just work on, and then I'll eventually hit a place where I'm like, oh, I could do this thing to that other thing, and then I'll go back and forth. And then that keeps me actually working on everything. Otherwise, yeah, I'll just be like, I've been working on this too long. I hate it now. It sucks. Sometimes you won't know when to stop. Like that's the other thing I've run into where I'm like, should I keep adding things?
Keep adding details.
Yeah.
Agreeable till the end of time. This project will never be done.
Yeah, there's some hacks. It helps being a YouTuber because I'm like, I need to get a video.
Need to finish the video.
Yeah, so there's a deadline, which means this has to be like I have to put it out before I'm satisfied, like completely. I'm like after I finish them, I'm always just like, there's so many things in my head. I have to kind of remember that nobody else knows what I'm picturing in my head, so they won't know it's not done, and just like
true,
like it's finished. It's finished for YouTube consumption. So I've been running into a thing where like I'm learning a lot about making videos, and I'll start one video and then learn a bunch of stuff about how to make it better, and then go back and watch the footage of the other one and be like, it's trash now. I don't want to finish it because I can't make it better. And I like didn't have lighting or didn't have whatever, and
just got to re-record the whole thing, throw it all away, start from scratch.
Yeah, remake this whole mini.
So, as you're working on many things at any given time, as you say, what's your current big project? What are you working on now? And obviously, if there's something that you want to keep under wraps, that's fine. But is there a big project that you're okay to talk about?
A lot of the projects, I mean, they just are like in so many different pieces, or like it's like, oh yeah, I'm definitely working on this, but all you see are like scraps of paper everywhere. So it's just, I can't really, I don't know. But I'm doing this series. I guess I'll just talk about this series I'm working on right now. Is the fairy tale, biggest series I should say. I'm working on is the fairy tale series, and I'm making dioramas of each, like a bunch of different fairy tales.
Which I've seen 2 videos of yours on this series so far.
Well, I've only done one officially in the series, but
oh, okay. So I've seen that one, and it looks great.
It's like a trend.
I love that stop motion.
I loved making that
because
I found a hack for making stop motion, and I was super happy. So I tried it, and I liked it.
Well, we'll have to discuss techniques later on, but I wanted to discuss just quickly a different technique that I've seen in some of your videos. One that I think is just so inventive that in my head as an engineer I consider as a big project technique, but you've managed to scale it down to such a small level, and that's thermo molding. You make this tiny little frame with a little bit of plastic, and you can heat it up and mold it around something. How did you come up with that process?
I didn't. That's the answer. I've seen a lot of different people in different ways on YouTube doing it, and I've just kind of like smushed together all of their concepts into a way that I could do with the stuff I had. Yeah, I went around and around. I like looked online about trying to buy one, and I was like, oh, this is insanely expensive and too big, and then I tried making an actual vacuum forming thing, which kind of worked, but it was noisy, and like I'm filming a video, and yeah, so I just kept like doing more and more revisions to the idea until it like worked for me. And yeah.
I think the first video of yours that I watched, you made a teapot that was this big out of 3 separate thermo molded components, and it's just the craft of that is just so amazing, and that's very well done.
Thanks. I was trying really hard. That took a lot of attempts, though. I love how it's like, oh, you see it on there, and it's like, yay, one take.
Sometimes it does take a few attempts. That's totally okay. Is there anything else that you would like to throw out there before we wrap up the interview? It's one of those horrible questions. It's like, how do we even answer that? Like,
I like your videos. Keep up the good work. Teach me more sculpting and painting things and 3D printing things.
Absolutely. Isn't that what the hobby
missing from my stuff?
Isn't that what the hobby is about? It's about lots of people doing lots of different things and sharing ideas.
Yeah.
A heartwarming ending to our... Well, thank you very much, Miss Minilife, for popping past. I hope that your next video goes perfectly smoothly with no retakes. And we will see you at some point when we get back to the brush. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
I quite enjoy the, as we've seen in several, I quite enjoy doing the terrain, and I'm quite interested in this thermal molding. So I think I might follow that up.
Yeah, her technique is, as she mentioned, she's picked it up from other people, but the way she's kind of taken the various ideas and put them together is just this tiny little bit of plastic that she can make a mold with, and it's a really good technique.
I mean, we all learn from other people. I mean, that's the whole point, is standing on the shoulders of giants, isn't it? It's improving upon what come before.
Get off my shoulders.
So talking about giants...
I think
that leads into our...
Nice segue.
I think that leads into one of our other subjects today, which is painting models that are outside the scale of what we normally paint. So obviously me and Ed are used to painting 32 sort of, 28, 32 mil sort of scales.
Bat this big.
So we've both, completely independently at this point, acquired a much larger model.
Yours is significantly larger than mine.
Yeah.
Mine is a 54 mil, so it's 1.7 times the size of the 32s, whereas yours is a 30 centimeter.
Yes, she is. Yeah, so she's
absolute giant.
So she's an action figure. She's articulated. And then McFarlane Toys make these under license, obviously from Games Workshop.
That sounds about right, yeah.
But they're £25, which is, I think there's quite a lot there at £25 in terms of detail. I'm planning on, once I decide on a pose, I'm going to glue her and green stuff in these joints so that you can't see them before I prime and paint her.
Yeah, I have, from a very early age, I'm not a particular fan of action figures of any type, because you get these, yes, you have articulation, but to achieve that you have these joints that don't look very good. I'd rather just have a single solid model that looks better. But I guess that's just kind of personal taste.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of articulation in this thing.
The waist,
I mean,
the hips,
that's cool movement,
knees.
but why would you want it to do that? You can't hold it in that position because it's kind of rubber. That's another thing I wasn't expecting, is this is all like rubber. It's very flexible. So I am really intrigued how well it's going to take paint. Like,
as soon as it starts to move, the paint might crack.
Yeah. One of our other friends, Manchester Nerther, we've mentioned a few times, he's got one of the other models from this series, and he's painted his up, and hasn't had any problems yet. So hopefully we'll.
Did he get the Beaky or the Imperial Guard?
I think it was a guardsman. He was more sending me photos of the rubbery, because that's what I was asking him about.
We'll see how that lasts with paint.
She's got
there are different
little
options.
foot that does that. Look. Little, yeah.
Toe articulation. Oh, the all-important toe articulation.
Let's feet in, and then looks like it's the Wicked Witch of the North. Yeah, it's really cool. The weapons come off. So I've got like a really big bolt gun. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to painting this, because I just think obviously what I do normally, there's a lot more detail here. It's going to be a lot less forgiving on terms of painting the detail in. So I think it's going to be an interesting challenge.
There's something that I found, and this is a few months back. I did paint a different model every day for a week. And one of the ones I did was a 54mm. And I found, and this is something about 32mm, you can kind of paint in texture a little bit here or there, little cross-hatching or stippling to achieve a different effect. With a 54mm, because it's that little bit larger, you kind of have to. I mean, you don't necessarily have to, but because it's a larger surface, you kind of, I was wanting to put in a lot more texture. So not just painting in the details, but on each flat surface, painting in the texture of whatever that is, so that the fabric and the metals and the armor and the leather look like different materials. And that's something that I don't have enough experience with to be good at. Yeah. And with that model, it sort of suffered because of that. I mean, it's a good test, and there's no such thing as a ruined model. I can always go back and improve on things when I do learn how. But that's the same thing with my... I'm not going to say what it is. Some people have already guessed what it is, but I'm not going to say what it is. It's another 54mm model, and it's one of the Inquisitor line. And I'm going to come in base coat, highlight, and then I'm going to go in with all of the texture painting techniques. Not texture paint, but painting in the textures.
So I think what I'm going to do with the metal armor is I'm going to do the base black as always. I think I'm going to do a little bit of metal dry brush just to make it look like the metal armor's scratched and stuff. I think that will help. I'm not 100%, but that's what I'm planning on playing with. Will she stand?
Yeah, so weathering as well, because you say like weathering for a 32, and you also say weathering for a 54 or for the larger action figure, but the exact techniques that you use don't have to be different. You can use the same techniques, but then there's also ways of doing things differently to achieve a different effect because it's in a different scale. And I'm just thinking of this on a massively technical level. Like, what can be done? How can I make this look different? Yeah, there can be a lot to it, and without painting a lot of models in different scales, which I'm probably not going to do, because I'm probably going to stick mostly to the 2832. It's just occasionally I'll dip my toe into a different scale and see what it's like.
I am now thinking, can I run this in a game? It's an official GW product.
It's not, though. It's a licensed product. It's an official McFarlane product.
Oh.
Also, what would you run it as? A knight? Imperial knight?
Yeah, it's a tiny Imperial Knight.
How tall is it? Because that doesn't look like a 30 centimetre.
That's not 30.
Is it 15?
No, it's going to be like, I'm going to say 15, I reckon. I don't have the tape measure in here because I took it to IKEA with me the other day.
Where's your calipers?
They're downstairs.
Where's your backup calipers?
I don't know. They were in here.
Currently, I can't get to my calipers, even though they're right here, because I've got lots of models on the box.
Okay. So it's bigger than 15. It's 18 centimetres.
That's a weird... Okay. 18 centimetres.
Yeah, it's between 17 and 18 centimetres. I imagine it's probably something in inches.
Well, it'll be 7.
7 inches, yeah.
But usually action figures are 3.5. Oh, of course, because they're 3.5. So double that would be 7. I guess there is something, yeah. We don't know is the answer to that question. We haven't a clue why it's 7 inches and not 6. Not 15 millimeter, 150 mil.
Maybe the Order Redactus will help us.
Maybe the Order Redactus will help us. Right.
Hold your pistol. I don't like...
Okay,
a trigger
okay.
discipline's not good. That's the downside.
I don't imagine anyone's trigger discipline is good in the 40k universe.
Trigger discipline in the 40k universe is actually putting your finger on the trigger.
The commissar will shoot you if you take your finger off of the trigger. It's like, you're a soldier. Keep your finger on the trigger where it belongs.
Act like it.
So as we've spoken about the larger scale models and maybe filling in some of the joins with some green stuff, there's also stuff to be said about green stuff and milliput and other types of modelling clay. And I've been making cloaks. I think that just about anyone who does any kind of modelling will use one of the many forms of modelling clay to gap fill. And that's kind of the first thing that people do is gap filling, and that's most of what people do with modelling clays. Occasionally you see people making details, like I've been adding in the cloaks. People add in folds of fabric or other things like that, or armor panels, or maybe details like an Aquila or an Inquisitor symbol, stuff like that. But then there are the people who make whole models. They just sculpt whole models. Obviously, all of these models were sculpted by someone at some point. I think the modern era, most of these are sculpted digitally, but traditionally, most of them are sculpted physically. But there are a few people in the community who also sculpt from scratch a complete model, and I want to have a go at that. It's on my list of things I'll get to eventually, and it might be one of those things where once I've done with the Tanith First and Only, and I've had all of the practice with the many cloaks that I have made, or will have made by that point, I'll then move on to other details, and very quickly after that I'll try and do a complete model.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It's an interesting challenge, because there's to do a detail, you can concentrate on just that detail, get it how you want it, line everything up, smooth it out, and then leave it to cure, whether it's chemically curing, whether it's baking or whatever. But when you're doing the whole model, you don't necessarily have to do the whole model in one go, but you certainly have to do parts of the model in one go, like the whole front or part of the front, and joining the different details that you have made with the other details that you have made. And that's something that's, there's a lot to that, and I want to give it a go, and I don't know how good I'm going to be at it, but I'm going to give it a go at least.
So what you're saying is you could build the model up as a sub-assembly.
Potentially build multiple separate pieces and then glue them together. Yeah.
Which again leads on to our next segment.
Which leads quickly on to... Why don't you talk about sub-assemblies?
For those of you that haven't come across this, is the idea of not completely building the model, building separate bits which you paint and then glue it together. The most obvious is like heads. So if you're building a model and you've got to put the head into a little recess, you're not going to be able to paint that as well if you've glued that in that model and then you're coming along afterwards and trying to get your brush in there.
Yeah, I found not only is it useful to separate a head for painting because of like big neck armor, but it can often be a good thing to separate the head just so you can concentrate on it.
Oh yeah.
Painting the face is usually that one detail that of people are often kind of, because you want it to be the best part of the model. And so if you separate it out and just take the time to do it very slowly and carefully, it's a psychological trick to help you to paint it better.
Yeah. So it's not a very good example, but the example I have here obviously is a sister model without head. Separate head primed in white. And the base separately. As we've mentioned before, I like to sit and spend time on these pre-molded bases. I love these. You know, they tell us their story in their own right.
Yeah, you like the terrain.
I do.
And a base is the smallest piece of terrain.
So this model has got like flames by her feet. So that's a first for me. I don't think I've ever seen that before in a model. There's a wee skull there and some bricks and stuff, so that's quite cool. But that sort of shows that, you know, like, there's no head there. I can sit and do the head separately, just on a bit of blue tack. Normally I stick it to the top of a pot, like that. But this is that.
I have a trick for doing heads separately, and that's to get a long section of sprue and glue it right on the end. Because then you can hold the sprue through your hand, and you can paint it up at the top.
Yeah, I just tend to blue tack it to the top of one of these bigger pots.
That works too.
Well, I suppose you could just stick it to the top of my painting handle, really. But you know, with some bigger models, it makes far more sense to do them in bits. It does complicate things a little bit because you're having to think when you're building them. I think the model that I've done it the most on would be like some Imperial Knights. There's stuff like under the arm and joints and stuff you would not be able to get in there to paint those if you did it all in one go.
Yeah, totally agreed. For the BackToTheBrush Stomper, I haven't even looked at the arms. I've done some more to the body, but I haven't looked at the arms yet because they're separated for sub-assemblies. The one counter argument to sub-assemblies, which is absolutely valid, is that you do have to plan it through, and it is more effort to do it. And then once you've finished painting it, you glue it together, and where you've glued it together, there's sometimes can be damage to the paint where the glue's
especially if you're using super glue, because you get that horrible white.
Why would you use super glue? Don't use super glue.
Resin models.
Yeah. And that is why, for a lot of my Tanith models with the cloak, I've fully assembled them, and then I've kind of gone in with a brush to try and get as much of the inside of the cloak as I can. But there's kind of quite a visible spot there that doesn't have paint. But for general infantry, for the most of the army, that's no one's really going to look at fairly closely, I don't really care. But now that I've got the brand new Gaunt's Ghost character squad, I want to do those in sub-assemblies, because I want to be able to get the inside of the cloak and make it nice and cleanly painted. Definitely. Unfortunately, the newer Games Workshop models are separated in a really weird way. And there is always a big open join somewhere on the model That means if you want to paint the cloak separately, you then have to glue it together and deal with this damage to the paint and then repaint that area. And it's kind of an unnecessary annoyance.
I wonder if you could get away with just masking a little bit of it, so it gives you a nice clean area to just put a little bit of glue rather than putting...
I mean, I almost always put blue tack over the surfaces that are going to be glued together, but there's always... Either there's a gap or there's squeeze out of glue.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. No two parts of any model are ever going to fit together so perfectly that the join disappears. So you either have to... So it's either a gap that you have to gap fill, or it's a kind of squeeze out of glue that will fill the gap, but then you have to scrape it down and kind of repaint over it.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer to fill the gap myself.
Yeah. In the case of the ghosts... And this is a big section of my video that's coming out tomorrow as far as the podcast is concerned. I talk about that a lot. That is kind of a significant part of that video, is how can I paint this model in sub-assemblies without then having a massive pain to glue it together. And when I eventually get to painting those models, we'll find out how I did.
And as per a request on Ed's videos, he's going to give us an army tour video.
Oh, yes, I will. Once I've finished the 6 models, I should probably make another Zona model, and then I'll do an army tour.
Yeah, I mean, so you got 40 of them.
I think it's about, including the ones from this month, I think it's about 40.
Yeah.
I want to do the new character models, so that's another 6. So it'll be somewhere between 45 and 50-ish. It might be actually less than that. It might somewhere between 40 and 50. I don't know exactly because I haven't been keeping track of them.
No.
But however many there are, I'll just do this is how far I've got.
Just do a long pan across the entire army is what I was saying. It would look cool.
I might do that as well. I have enough parts to just about double that to 80. So
wow.
I think I've got parts for 80 now.
Okay, that's
it's either 70 or 80, something like that. And if I buy more, stop me from buying more.
You said in the video you did the other day that you would basically bankrupt yourself by keep buying these.
I think that was in relation to leftover sprues, because that was the Scion heads that have the berets. And the thing is, before I bought that sprue, I have plenty of heads for my models. But by buying that sprue, I have different heads. But I now have even more. So I didn't need them, but I wanted them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the same thing with hobbies, though, isn't it? It's always want. You don't need. Yeah,
I mean, I guess
need a house full of miniatures. But
I guess I don't need the models in the first place, do I? This is a hobby, after all. Yeah, I need to slightly curtail just how much I spend, because it can get out of hand. I guess I'm not going crazy on stuff, and I'm not, other than the Gaunt's Ghost set, I'm not buying new Games Workshop stuff every month, and some people are, and that's far more money than what I'm spending.
Yeah, I mean the box behind me, which you've probably seen in the video that I've turned to, that's got every single one of the new Sisters of Battle releases in it. That was like 170 quid, I think, in total. Like there.
Expensive, but that you don't do that every month.
Oh no, there's not many models for the Sisters of Battle. It's not like Space Marines, where you could paint a new model every day for the rest of your life and still not do all the Space Marine models.
Is it YouTube where people are uploading 24 hours of video every second or something ridiculous like that?
Yeah,
it's like Games Workshop are publishing a model every 30 minutes so that you can't possibly paint all of them in your life, because by the time you finish painting them, another one's come to its funeral, kind of thing.
Did I show this before? I can't remember if I showed that before or not.
Ah, no, that's new.
So 2 weeks ago, I picked up some, it's mostly terrain, off of Facebook Marketplace. this was in a bad way. I had to cut some of these and re-glue them because they weren't lined up properly, and like put floors back in.
I recognise those floor tiles.
So
are those the? Is it Zone Mortalis? No, it's not. It's the. What are they called? Those. What sets that floor tile from?
I think it's Sector Imperialis.
Yeah,
series?
Sector Imperialis. That's the one.
So that's this white colour here where the skulls are. That's the primer. This is a black contrast paint for a base, and then the yellow that's everywhere, that's going to be gold when it's finished. But that's just a base. The inside I've got to do again because it looks awful with the contrast paint.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of dusty weathering will hide all of that.
The inside is going to be different anyway because the inside of a building is not going to be the same colour as the outside anyway. So I'm just going to go grey, I think. I think what I'm going to do is mask it off and spray grey. Oh, it's missed in one of the things off the end. When I sat down to start filming today, I found this on the floor, so the cats have obviously knocked it off. Some bits and bobs. I also got some resin, like barricades, some old resin, like a Space Marine bike that had crashed and stuff like that. I'd never seen them before, but when I found them by looking them up, the set sells for 60 quid on eBay. Brand new in box. I mean, these aren't brand new, but an older one.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so the plan with this is to sort of do a bit more theming around the Sisters of Battle. I'm going to say this mainly for Ed because I know he won't know, but with 8th edition sort of onwards, Games Workshop introduced each faction has a building that.
Oh yeah, there's like a fancy building that you can put on the field at the beginning of the game,
and has effects. So like the Space Marines get this bad boy.
It's almost an excuse to pay more for terrain.
Yeah. So the Sisters of Battle get a Battle Sanctorium, which is very similar to that building, along with a big statue of a sister. But it gives like some pretty sizable buffs. In my opinion, it's kind of pay to win. The model came out, it was initially 60, and I think it's like 70 quid now. It's just daft. It's daft.
For a statue.
It's a nice statue, don't get me wrong, but
it's like that big?
It's really
fairly big?
It's really big, yeah, because it comes up to
it
comes up to the 3rd floor on one of these. Something like that. Yeah. But
okay, that's much bigger than I thought it was. I've seen pictures, I haven't actually seen one in person.
Yeah.
I know that the orcs get is it the Mech Boy Workshop?
Which I think is probably one of the nicer ones. The mould is nice on there.
It sort of looks cool, but I'm not spending more than a £5 on it. It's just not
It's a highly precise,
that interesting for me.
Plastic injection mould designed to look like bits of rubbish stuck together.
Do you know what the Imperial Guard one is? Because I don't have a clue what the Imperial Guard one would be.
It's the Bastion, the tower, the 4.
Oh, that thing! I've seen. Yeah, I have seen that. Okay.
Although I think any Imperium model can take that. But
I think that's even less interesting than the Mech Boys Workshop. Again, that's just a terrain piece. How much is it? 140 quid.
No, it's quite cheap, that one. It's quite cheap. The other one I know off the top of my head is this Tectonic Fragdrum, which is really cool. It's a Gene Stealer Cults one. Even though it's Imperial.
Is that actually I've seen someone on YouTube basically make that out of chipboard and bits of plastic.
Oh god, yeah. But like, the really cool rule with this is that
I thought it was just terrain. I mean, it is really cool terrain.
It is they can tunnel under the board and then pop out wherever they want in the game. If you've got this, they have to pay points for this, but
that's not the sort of thing you can do in the time span of a game, or at least not realistically. But I guess science fiction and game rules don't match reality.
But yeah, it's a cool model.
Ever. Well, now that we're coming to the end of our podcast, let's have some messages from the Ordo Redactus, which is, of course, anyone in the comment section below can make a message to say that something that we have said is wrong, or just they want to add some information to what we have said, if we've missed something. And we have a message from Foxymitz, who is our chief researcher for the Ordo Redactus, who says, "The official Ordo Redactus report regarding the study of material entitled Back to the Brush, Episode 9. The Ordo Redactus found the wordplay of Volpone and Volponi to be quite amusing." This is, of course, the how do you pronounce the word Volpone? I have been informed that a lot of the American readers imagine it being pronounced Volpone, which is more of a
Italian sounding.
Like a Italian or even a Mexican sounding, which makes sense. But Volpone, maybe it should be Volpone, just to keep the horse puns. Scone, as in the tasty treat, rhymes with gone, not bone. That is for scone, as in the location and the stone.
What?
Which I've probably ruined by pronouncing incorrectly, but there it is. The Order Redactus feels that an injustice has occurred with the lack of appearances of the almighty Henry. His beautiful whiskered face and floofy tail must be recognised, acknowledged, and worshipped accordingly.
Yeah, unfortunately,
he's
like not appeared again today, although we have had Dusty go past a few times. So.
Yeah, Dusty's been in the background. But it seems like the chief researcher of the Order Redactus has a false idol and needs to be
exterminatus.
We need some exterminatus just to make sure. Yes. And lastly, the comment made by chief researcher of the Order Redactus, Foxymitz, regarding the knitting of a graveyard faster than the pair of us can build ours, was stated after the official transmission of the Order Redactus had been sent, and therefore is not binding in any way. So there, unquote. Transmission ended. Well, if you want to wiggle your way out of it, fine. I'm still building mine eventually in a few years when I get around to it. As I've said, the Back to the Brush Stomp is my kind of go-to big project at the moment, and every now and again I'll do a bit more to that. And when that's done, when that's at the first stage of doneness, then I'll go on to the graveyard.
First stage of doneness.
Yeah. Because it's such a big...
Oh, there you go, Order Redactus. There is a hungry cat who wants me to feed him.
Well, in that case, we should probably end the podcast.
Hello. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As always, we have some close-up pictures of the models we've discussed today over on our Insta spam. Just so you can get a close-up and look at the finer details. And again, we'd like to thank Miss Minilife for agreeing to appear in this month's episode.
Yeah, our first interview. I think it went quite well. Well, with all that done, I'm Ed Scar.
And I'm Paul Allen.
And we'll see you next month when we get Back to the Brush.
I think it was Midwinter Winnie's did a video of all the different...
Do you want to say that channel name again? I just don't want you in the podcast saying Midwinter.
Winnie the Pooh's video. So he did.
Or move the mic up to you.
I look like the dictator from that episode of Star Trek. Like,
I know the episode, but I don't remember.
When the great leader
Everything
appears on the television, he's like that, and it turns out it's a recording.
Oh. Do you remember any of the names of some of the channels or people that have done that?
But I remember it was like a hamster. Well, the first one I saw was a little hamster eating.
A hamster made a little tiny kitchen. Excellent.
No, he ate in the kitchen.
That makes more sense. About having a pile of shame, a pile of unpainted models. I have a folder of uncompleted videos.
Yeah.
I
have a few videos in there too.
Only including ones that I've started recording, I have about 30.
I have less.